Hello everyone, welcome to the part 2 of ASP.NET Core Web API CRUD series with SQL Server and Entity Framework 4. In part 1, we have seen how to install Entity Framework 4 and connect to SQL Server database. We have created Student API with Get All Student endpoint. We got to know about the migration and resolved issues which came up during the coding. In today's video, we will cover Get by ID and add student API. So basically we will be covering a get call and a post call. So let's jump into the code. So let's open the Visual Studio. Here you can see I have already that method which we created last day. Now we will create another get call. So it will be also of type HTTP get. Okay, but we will receive the ID from the UI or in our case from the Swagger, and we will pass it to our dbContext class, and our dbContext class basically get the data or grab the data from the SQL server for us, and it will show us to the ultimately we have to send it to the UI, right? So that is our ultimate goal. So let's try to write the method here. Public async task, it will be same as the above one, action result, right? Now here is a catch. So basically earlier we used, you can see here, IEnumerable of student. Why? Because we were actually fetching all the student record, right? So if in my database I have 10 student, all the 10 student record will come here, right? But now in today's video, we are not going to cover, not going to get all the student list. Rather, we will be fetching only one particular student record, right? So the ID we will pass, and based on that ID we need the student record, okay, for that ID. So here only we will write the return type as student because we are not going to get a list, okay. So let's name it as get student by ID, and in the parameter we will be passing the ID, right, which will be of type integer. Now in this get method also we have to specify that we are going to we are actually expecting a parameter with the URL, right, uh, with the name ID. So here also I will be writing ID, okay. So this ID actually will be passing from the from our UI or from the Swagger, and actually it will be sent to this method, okay. Now what we will do, we will create a variable first. So var student equals to, here we will fetch the student details, particular student details from our DB through our dbContext class, right? So we already have the read-only property which is context dot. You can see students came up, so student dot. Here you can see in the suggestion it is showing single or default, right? But we are not going to use single or default. Rather, what we will be using, we will be using find async, okay, and here we will pass the ID, okay, and this will be of type, I mean we have to write await here, okay. I have explained you actually in my last video that what I am using, why I am using await here. So I will passing the ID, okay. Now here why I have not used single or default or first or default, right, and why I am using find async, okay. So there are various benefits of using the find async when we are actually searching in our database with the primary key. So in our database for the student table, ID is the primary key, and here also we are going to search with the primary key, right? So for the better performance, we actually use the find async in this case. So what it actually do? Find async. So internally, actually, entity was already, let's say if that student record or student data is already fetched and already it is present in that um, context class, right? So it avoids a round trip to the database. So which means it won't go to the database and grab the data for you. Rather, it, from the context itself, it will uh, give you the result because it will be stored in the cache, right? So if it is stored in the cache, it will search for that first. And as you all know, that cache is very, very faster than the database call, right? So performance wise, find async will be much, much faster than the uh, single or default or the first or default, right? So uh, whenever just we have to keep in mind that whenever we are searching with the primary key, then only we should use it. Okay. So what it basically do, it basically if I go to my SQL server, right, what it basically do, let's say I am using find async. So internally in the DB, it basically do select top one star from students, then where ID equals to that ID whatever we are passing, right? So in our case, whatever the ID we will be passing, that will be assigned to ID. So in this way, it helps to increase the performance. It won't search for all the records and then do this, right? It just do that select top one from students where ID equal to this. And also it's a asynchronous operation. So non-blocking, it's basically a non-blocking operation. It will not be blocked, right? Which is very much critical for scalability in web API. Also, it helps to clean our code, right? But we should not use it if we are not using the primary key, right? If we are using, let's say, joins, or if we have something else, we are not searching with the ID, rather some other column, then we should not use this find async. Rather, we should use that first or default or single or default async like that. Okay. So I hope this is clear to you. Now what we will see, we will check the value of the student. Let's say I don't have, uh, like I am passing some invalid ID, right, which is not at all present in the database. So for that, we always need to have a null check here, right? So if the student equals to null, what we will return? We will return user that this is not found. Okay. And if it is fine and if it is not null, we will just return the OK. And inside the OK, we will pass the student object, whatever we are getting from the database, right? That particular object we will be passing to the UI. So this is the HTTP get by ID call. Let's run the application and let's test it through Swagger. Okay. So let it compile, build and compile. In the meanwhile, let's switch to our database. Okay. So here we last in the last video, you know that we have created this dbo.students through migration. And if I do a select star from the student, you can see these are the three records which we actually inserted in our last video itself, right? So those three records are still present. And if I come to here, you can see there are two API now. One is the get call, which is API/student. So this will bring all the record of student. And here we have API/student/ID, right? Which we just now we created. So here you can see from the URL itself, it is saying that after this student, we have to pass the ID. And in the Swagger also, here it is showing that ID, it is a required field. So we need to pass and it is of type integer. So let's try it out without wasting much time. Now here, let's say I have only three record here, right? As I showed you to the database, 1, 2, and 3 ID we have. Let's say I need the record for ID 3. I will hit 3, give 3 here, and we will execute. Okay, so it is still executing. So here you can see the response code is 200, which means okay. And the response body is ID 3, name is Ramesh, age 26, department is arts, right? So if I come here, you can see here also for the 3, we have the name Ramesh, age 26, department is arts. So our API is working perfectly fine. Now let's test a negative scenario. So as we have seen that we have only 3 record, and let's say I want to grab the record which having the ID as 5, right? Let's execute and see what it is giving us. So 404. We all know, right? 404 means not found. So here also it is actually it is written that it is not found. because the 5 ID is not at all there, right? So that's why it is giving us the 404 error. So our both positive and negative scenarios are working fine. Okay, so let's go to the Visual Studio again, and now we will write the first post API. Okay, so it will be of type HTTP post. Okay, so we covered two get API. Now we will write one HTTP post method. Okay, so let's try to build the method. So public, I think similar to that task, and here also what actually we will have to write, not the enumerable, right? Because here also we are not going to, we will not be adding the whole student list or something. We will be adding only single record at a time. Okay, so action result type student, and let's name it as create, or maybe add student we can give add student. Okay, and in the parameter what we need to pass, we have to pass the student object, right? Because we will be adding one student record, full record. I mean, we will be inserting ID, name, uh, and then the age and also the department, right? So that's why, yes, we have giving the student, and we have to take a variable student. Okay, now what we will do, so here we are actually referring to a model, right, which we created, the student model. Now this student model has some property, right? So whatever the data we will pass, that actually should match with this particular properties, right? If we go to the definition of this student class, we'll be able to see that we have the public integer in. So there is a ID. Okay, there should be ID, there should be name of type string, there should be age of type integer, and there should be department of type string, right? So the data which will come from the UI or come from the Swagger should match with this model class. Otherwise, we will not be able to store it in the database, right? It will not match. Then how we can store it in the database? It will give us some exception. So for that, before actually sending this request to the SQL Server, we have to put a check here. So we will put if not equals to model dot is valid, not the model state we have to check, right? So model state dot is valid. If it is not valid, right, that one, then what we will do, we will tell user that it is a bad request, bad, return bad request. Okay, so uh, return bad request, and inside this, here I have spelling mistake, return return bad request, and inside that we will pass that model state. Okay, so that user will be able to know that what actually wrong he is doing. But if user provides all the value, then what we will do, we will call our db context class. Everything we will do through the context class, right? Dot students dot add async, and we will pass the student object to that. Now it will be added to this particular student property, right? Now we also have to tell the control that go to the SQL Server and insert this particular record. So for that we have to call another thing, which is context dot save changes async. Okay. So what it will do, it will go to the SQL Server database, and it will reflect uh, it will start reflecting the new record. Okay, after that, to let user know what we will do a return created action we will do. Okay, so created action basically returns that particular code, create code. Okay, that is 201, I guess. We will see that. Okay, and we will just to give some more information to user, we will also do this, get student by id, okay, comma, new id equal to, so basically what we are doing, I will tell you, let me just finish this, okay, by id and then comma, that student object. So what we are doing here, to let user know that which particular id, I mean which particular new record he has been added, right? So that's why we are calling the get student by id method, whatever we have written here, get student by id, and it's need a id, particular id, right? So here also we are what we are doing, we are doing id equal to this particular student dot id, and that particular object we are again sending to the UI. So what will happen here, user will be able to know that which record he or she has inserted, right? So let's go to the student.cs class. We will see one thing here, okay? Currently you can see that id is of type nullable, right? So we will not make it nullable as of now, and we will make it a required, okay? Now let's try to run the application, and let's try to insert a value to the database, okay? We will see one um, exciting thing here. Let the Swagger run. So yeah, Swagger has been loaded now, and you can see that our post API is also here, which is API slash student. Okay. So if I come here and if I give a try it out, it is showing me, you can see here, it is showing me that I need to pass the ID, the name, age, and string. Right? So I have 3 record currently. Let's say I am adding it as a 4, and now name. Let's say I am giving as, what are the names currently we have. Okay, let's say I am the giving name as Rajesh. Okay, and let's say the age is 22 and department is science. Okay, so all the records we have filled here. Now what we will do, we will click on execute. So it is getting executed. Okay, and now let's see what is happening here. We are getting the error, right? So the status is 500. So which means it's an internal server error basically. And what it is telling here, you can see this particular line. Cannot insert explicit value for identity column in students where identity insert is set to off. So what that means, if I go to our database table, you can see we have 4 properties here, right? Properties are column, you can say, where the ID column is basically a primary key and it's identity column, right? What identity column basically means? So in SQL Server, identity column means that uh, is used basically to automatically generate unique numeric values for a column, typically used as a primary key. So here also we are doing the same thing. And if I show you the migration file through which we created this table, right? So we will click on view here and we'll click on solution explorer. Here, if we go to our migration file through which we created, and here you can see the ID property, which is actually a identity column. And this two one you can see here, right? What this two one means, the first part is the seed and second part is the increment. The first one is basically telling us the starting value, that the starting value should start with 1, and the next one is basically the value to add for each new row. So whenever there will be a new row inserted in the database, it will be automatically incremented by 1, right? So that means we manually should not actually touch insert that ID column. It will automatically be inserted or gets incremented, right? So we just have to pass the name, age, and department. Okay. Now if we go to our Swagger again, and here instead of these 4, if we just pass null, let's see what happens. If we execute, come here, it is saying again the response status is 400. Now why it is coming? Because in our code we have the model. In our model class, if we go to the model class, our id is a required property, right? Why? Because we have not make it nullable, so we cannot pass a null value to this ID. So to do that, what we have to do, we have to make it, let me just stop this. Okay. We have to make it nullable. So if we make it nullable, then only we will be able to, we can or cannot pass it, right? It is up to us. Now we will rerun this particular application and we will go to the same Swagger and we will try to see that whether now it is allowing us to insert or not. Okay. So before coming here, I will show you the SQL DB also. Here, if I execute the select star, you can see no new record has been added and we have only 1, 2 and 3 records. Okay, so our Swagger has been loaded again and you can see here the post API call. Now we will try to execute it. Okay, so what we will do, we will pass the ID as null. We will send the name as, let's say, Rajesh, age is 22 and department will still be fine. Now we will execute it and we will see what happens. So you can see with the ID 4, the Rajesh record has been added here, right? It is the code is 201 which has been created and this is the response body. Now let's go to the database and let's see whether the new record has been added or not. So if we execute select start, you can see with the ID 4, the Rajesh record has been successfully added, right? So our add API is also working fine and working correctly. And if we want to put something invalid, right, that also we can test. Already we have checked that without passing the ID, right, if it is required, it was giving us some error. Now let's say the department instead of string, let's say if I give something integer, right, let's say 33 or something, and if I execute it, here you can see the response status is 400, which is meaning that the model state is not getting verified, right? And here also it is showing us the result also that the JSON value could not be converted to a system string like that. Okay. And here you can see the actual message, the student field is required like kind of thing. So it is actually um, uh, not able to verify this particular model class or that student model class. Okay. So I hope this part is clear to you. Now in our next video, we will see the delete and update API. Along with that, we will also explore migration in a detailed manner, okay, in a more detailed manner. If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe to Programmator. See you in the next video. Goodbye.